Hi BookTube. I'm here today with a Canada Reads review, and this one will be for Jonny Appleseed by Joshua Whitehead, defended by Devery Jacobs. So, Jonny Appleseed is about Jonny. His last name's not really Appleseed. You're gonna have to read the book to figure out why it's titled that. Jonny is an OG Cree, two-spirited person working as a cyber sex worker to make ends meet in his Winnipeg apartment, obviously off-res. We follow him as he tries to get enough money to get back to his mother on the res in time for his stepfather's funeral. This book touches on so much. Firstly, I describe this book as vulgar in every sense of the word. So yes, there are a lot of descriptive sex scenes, which to be honest is not something I really like to read about. And I want to clarify that it is not just queer sex that I have not that I have a problem with it. It's not just queer sex that I don't like to read about. It's also straight sex. I identify as asexual, so like none of it really appeals to me. So just a word of warning that there is a lot of very descriptive sex in there. And I can understand why, objectively, why that is the case and why it's important for that to be depicted, because our society is so inundated with straight sex that, you know, to kind of balance things out, some books are out there very clearly depicting non-cis, non-hetero sexual acts. Yeah, so I can see why that's important to include in this book. Also, as a trigger warning, there are scenes of sexual assault. It's also vulgar in the sense of the word that means characteristic of or belonging to the masses, which some people may refer to as lowbrow. This is a story we don't often get to see in literary fiction, a story that is increasingly becoming more and more familiar to Canadians, a story of poverty, of just, you know, just making it or barely making it at times. You know, Jonny struggles to make rent. He's living off of 7-Eleven hot dogs and box stuffing. He pushes himself and his body to the limits to make enough money to just live and to go back home. And that's something that I see a lot of in my day-to-day life, and something that I can identify with, as I also work in a job that requires physical labor. I don't work as a sex worker, but there's the same idea that you're still selling your body for someone else's gain. These two topics are tied to the larger theme, that of intergenerational trauma. Intergenerational trauma, if you don't know, is trauma caused by historical oppression being passed down from generation to generation. So we see this especially in Canada through colonization and forced assimilation done through, you know, Canadian policies towards Indigenous populations. So issues such as addiction and poverty in Indigenous communities, as seen in Jonny Appleseed, are evidence of this intergenerational trauma. And these stories need to be told so that more people are aware of the damage of colonization. The fact that it is not just in our past, that it is still something that has effects to this day and is still happening to this day. You know, colonization and forced assimilation, we need to do something about it. We need to vote in the right ways. We need to put the pressure on the right people in order to get things done. This book is also very much a book of the moment, of our current times, with references to pop culture such as Florence and the Machine, X-Men, and trips to named stores like 7-Eleven and Walmart. This book is placed in a definite time period, our time period. The book works to mirror our world back at us, but more importantly through another perspective, you know, that not a lot of people get to get. The perspective of a queer Indigenous sex worker. Those are three things that, you know, are all minority things that not a lot of people get to see the perspective of. So Whitehead works to incorporate things that are easily recognizable to his writers, like eating a 7-Eleven hot dog late at night. I'm sure we've all been there before. And then he takes the chance while he has it to show you something different, from a different perspective, in a different way. And I think that works really effectively in the book. Another thing this book does really well is relationships. Whitehead portrays complicated and realistic relationships. So Jonny questions what kind of relationship he wants with his best friend, which is full of spoilers, so I won't get into that, but if you read the book, you'll know. He also has a complicated relationship with his mom. You know, the most important relationship, though, is with his Kokum, his grandmother. In a world full of bullies and abuse for being who he is, his Kokum was someone who helped him understand himself and appreciate himself. She was always there to push him along his path a little more. The relationships in these books are so beautiful and complex and beautifully described. Whether it's debating what kind of relationship he wants with his best friend, or regretting never get to have that final conversation with his Kokum, or how much he loves his mother despite all her issues. He explores each with wide open eyes for the reader. The only problem is that I feel Jonny maybe got a little lost at times in all that Whitehead wanted to explore in Jonny Appleseed. So sometimes the writing or the theme he was tackling kind of took over and kind of hid Jonny behind it. This is a story of its time. It's full of pop culture references, it's a slice of life without satisfying climaxes, a vulgar and unapologetic depiction of poverty, indigenous, and queer lives in our current times. Whitehead elevates all of these topics, especially the vulgar ones, with such beautiful writing. Short chapters feel like a window into Jonny's life and keep the pace moving at a fast speed, and combined with the writing, even though I was kind of repelled at some of the imagery, I couldn't put the book down at times. The juxtaposition of gross imagery with beautiful language was the perfect combination to describe feelings that can't be explained very easily. For example, I'm going to read a passage here. All I wanted was to shift back up inside my mother, in the bathwater of her uterus, to count time as a crawfish would, for days to mean something other than that notch in the wall, another treaty dollar earned. I wanted that. I wanted all of that. How easy, how warm, how outlandishly impossible, I thought. Just how in the hell are we supposed to live in a world that ages us like fish? So you can see there's a lot of gross stuff, climbing back up into your mother's bathwater womb, relating to fish and specifically crawfish, the reference even to treaty dollars, but it's all said so beautifully. Jonny's self-awareness and unapologetic personality was a breath of fresh air. He wasn't always likable, he made some questionable moral decisions, but I just couldn't help but root for the glitter princess. So how well does this book meet Canada Reads' theme? To remind you, the theme this year is one book to transport you. So while this book is actually, I think, the only book in the lineup this year to take place in Canada, this book does transport you. It transports you into a different life, one that many of us have no experience with. First off, our main character is Indigenous. He's OG Cree. He's also two-spirited, which is a person who has both feminine and masculine spirit. He's also a sex worker, and he's poor. We get transported into this character in this first-person narrative and into a perspective that some Canadians flinch from and that some Canadians deny even exist within our borders. And I think that's a very important way to look at this. It also transports you to Canada, particularly a side of Canada that not a lot of people want to face. The consequences of colonization and the years of neglect we as a people have in addressing the consequences of colonization. While not always explicitly stated, Jonny and the characters around him are definitely affected by intergenerational trauma and racism. Jonny's return to the res is a call for Canadians to turn their attentions back to the Indigenous people whose lands we stole and now occupy. So how do I think this book will do in the competition? I think this book will be a challenging book for some people because of its vulgarity. Canada Reads does have a history also of not appreciating Indigenous literature and believing that the stories of Indigenous people should be more palatable for white audiences, so I'm hesitant to say that this book will win, however much I would like for that to happen. I think that this book may make it to the second last book to be voted off, so second or third place, similar to previous years in regards to Indigenous literature. So yeah, let me know if you've read this book, what you thought of it, where you think it will place in Canada Reads, and thank you for watching.